Hello again, everybody. We have another training video for our checkpoint training. One of the things that's always scary when you're trying something new is trying to figure out the software that's involved with it. And so the software we have for our checkpoint is something called Who's Next. And so let's talk about that for a little bit and how it's going to be used at each of the checkpoints. So like you probably know, when somebody walks up to check into one of our stations, we're going to ask them a few questions, like, do you have your LSC ID card or your ID number? What buildings are you going to visit today? We want to find out if they're an employee, a student, or a visitor. And we want to make sure that they've completed their health declaration and that they've answered no to all the questions before we send them off to wherever they're headed. So then the big question is, how do we record that? What are we doing? What is the person behind the desk doing to record all the answers from the person? So, like I said, the software we're going to use is something called Who's Next, which this is the icon you'll see on the desktop. It should be open likely by the time you get there, but if not, you know what to click on. And Who's Next is software that we use in our student services areas to help direct students to understand what services they need and make sure that they connect with the right people. But it's also very useful for what we're doing, because we want to make sure we get contact information for students and that we have processed them correctly as they come in, and we wanted to record it electronically. That would be really nice. And so that's Who's Next turns out to be perfect for that. So then, of course, the question is, okay, if this is software, how hard is it? It's not hard, and we're going to take care of that in this video, hopefully. How does it work? Let's find out. Okay, so the first thing that you might have to do is log in. So if you double click on that icon, what you'll have is a window that pops up with a login. And so this is not something we want individuals to log in for, but we have taped to the computers the username and password we'd like you to use. And so the usernames are all in this format that you see here, MC underscore check-in A or B or C, etc. So Who's Next will open up after you've logged in with that name, and this is the screen that you'll work in for the rest of the time you're there. So the first step is when a person comes up, in the upper left corner of the screen, you'll see a little button that says Sign In. So you click on that, and when you do, this little window pops up. And this window is asking for their student ID. So if it's a student or an employee, so in other words, somebody with an LSC ID, then if they have their card, and if you have a barcode scanner, you can do that right now. And if you have that, it will populate the box with their ID number, and you won't have to ask them for it. But you can also ask them. You can just say, what's your ID number? And you can type it in, and that would work equally well. If it's a vendor or other visitor who doesn't have an LSC ID, all you have to use is their cell phone number, because that'll give them a unique identifying code so that we can look them up later. So once that's in, you can click Sign In, and then this window pops up, which is a really neat feature inside of Who's Next. If you're going to have somebody wait off in a waiting area, we're not using it, so all you have to do in this case is just skip it by clicking No Thank You. Okay. If the person has already been to visit us and we've collected their contact information, this is what you're going to see. Their name will pop up and their student ID. That means they're already in there. You don't have to ask any questions about their contact information. So just double click their name to go to the next step. Now, if we don't have their contact information, you'll see this window. And we only want to collect a few pieces of information. We don't need everything that's on this list. But of course, we want to know their first name. We want to know their last name. We also want their email address, and this is so we can contact them later if we have an exposure case and we need to reach out to them. And we also want their cell phone number. Again, this is a way for us to contact them if we need to. And you notice there's no space for cell phone number, so we are recording that in the home phone blank. And then one favor to ask is, please, if you're entering this information, do it very carefully, because any error in the email address means the email will bounce back, and we may or may not be able to figure out how the email was entered incorrectly. So please be very careful in how you do that. That would be appreciated. Okay, so once you've done that, or once you've gone double-clicked on their name, if they were in the system already, you'll see the set of questions. And so this is exactly what we were asking in the example at the beginning. So the first thing we want to know is just what location are they attending. So this is simple. You know the answer to this one without asking. But then we want to ask them some questions related and check the corresponding boxes. What buildings are you going to visit today? So whatever buildings they plan to enter, check it here. And this is not anything that's a strict requirement. It's just to help us to understand where they're going to be. And again, in case there's an exposure, hopefully there's not, but if there is, this gives us an opportunity to find out where people have been. Also, we want to know if they're an employee, a student, or a visitor. So check the corresponding box. And then related to the health questionnaire, we want to know if they completed it, and we want to know if they answered no to everything. If they did not complete the health declaration, they cannot come into campus. If they said yes, or if they checked any symptoms on the list, they cannot come into campus, and we need to ask them to leave. You also might have a situation where you want to add notes about a particular visit. Maybe some examples could be the person had a young child accompanying them. They still need to fill out a health declaration for that child and scan their temperature, but we don't need to collect their cell phone number or their ID. That's okay, but we still want to put them in the notes. Or if they're a vendor, it's helpful if we know the name of the company they're working for. So that could be useful here as well. Or if anything goes wrong and you just want to make a note of it, this is a perfect place to do it. So to do that, you just click on the Visit Notes tab and you'll see this window. And then anything that you want to type in, you enter into the Public Notes area at the bottom. You'll notice this big inviting window at the top for private notes. Please don't use that because the notes will be very, very private, meaning we'll never see them again. And that's it. You're done checking that person in. So at the bottom, you can click Save Visit, and this window will pop up to make sure you really want to save it. I don't know why Who's Next does that, but it does. Just say yes, and then it'll tell you that the visit has been saved successfully. So just click OK. And then that person's ready to go. And so some things you might remind them of is that at the end of the check-in process, they can pick up a sticker dot. And every day we'll have a different color sticker dot that will show that person has been through the check-in. Tell them to have a great day, be kind and friendly, remind them to wear their mask, remind them to wash their hands, and they can head on out. So that's it. Hopefully that made the whole Who's Next process look easy. We also have a job aid handout that we'll share with you in case you prefer to see that or if you want to carry something with you. But again, thank you very much for volunteering. We really appreciate it.